Hello and welcome to the F2 show. I'm your host, Fraser Ford, and I'm joined today by Inside F2 editor Hannah Pruffock and Inside F2 writers Luke John Buckle and Lawrence Griffin. Coming up on the show, we look ahead to this weekend as Formula 2 returns to Sochi for round 6 of the 2021 season. Silly season is coming to an end and the driver market is slowly falling into place. We examine who from our Formula 2 grid is going where. And Formula 1 moves to Agora Drive in St. Petersburg for 2023. Should Formula 2 be joining them? We discuss all of that to come then. But Luke, I want to come to you first. First time we've had you on the show since Bahrain, which seems ages ago now. What have you made of the season so far?
Yeah, it's been a really good season. Typical F2, really good racing, lots of overtakes. Interesting with the new format, 3 races per weekend. I think over the course of a weekend, it adds more entertainment, but with the long gaps, over the course of a season, race by race, it can sort of take the momentum out of the season, really. But I've been really enjoying the battle between Piastri and Zhou. They've done really well, especially Piastri. In his first year, he's been on top of Schwartzman and guys like Porsche winning in Monaco. So it's been a really good season. Hopefully into Russia and the 2 rounds after that should be really good.
Yeah, hopefully it continues. And Hannah, you're back from your holidays. Did you still manage to keep up with all the Formula 2 action in Monza whilst you're away?
Of course. Don't think I could miss it for the world. Even made the family watch it whilst we were out and about and in the caravan. But I'm certainly glad I didn't miss it. It was a brilliant weekend in Monza. We knew it was going to be a bit chaotic, especially given the qualifying format. But to see the likes of Oscar Piastri taking victory again, Zhou's double podium, and seeing people like Jehan Daruvala as well take a victory this season. It's first of the year so far. I think it highlighted some of the best that's to come in the championship battle, and especially we needed some good performances from them, and they certainly delivered. And who can forget Dan Ticktum charging through the grid in the feature race? I think he was probably one of the standouts of the weekend, and now I'm looking forward to seeing what the action's like in Sochi.
Yeah, so much action last time out, Lawrence. Great to have you back on the show again. More of the same this weekend, right?
Yeah, hopefully so. It would be nice, wouldn't it? Hopefully a few less yellow flags. You know, that was a shame to see it interrupt procedures so often last race weekend, and you know, put a premature end to one of the races. We don't want to see that again. But yeah, hopefully if it's full of action like the last race was and like the last time out in Sochi was back in 2020, then yeah, we should be in for a fun weekend and plenty to talk about at the end of it as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed, a brilliant weekend last time out. Let's take a look at the championship standings then as we head into Sochi. Oscar Piastri extended his lead at the top of the standings to 15 points in Monza. However, a strong weekend from Guan Yu Zhou keeps him in contention. Robert Schwartzman will be hoping to put the pressure on the top 2 with a strong weekend this weekend. And Yuri Vips fell outside of the top 5 in Monza. He'll be hoping to have a much stronger weekend this weekend. And the team standings, Prama's strong weekend in Monza means they'll take a 69-point lead into this weekend. They'll take some catching towards the end of the season. Carlin had a strong weekend last time out. They moved within 8 points of UNI Virtuosi. High Tech and ART round out the top 5. Home event this weekend then for Robert Schwartzman. Lawrence, can he use that to his advantage and start, gaining on the top 2 of the standings?
Yeah, I think he'll really hope so, and maybe that home advantage could be what he needs to spark that form in him, because so far this season he perhaps hasn't quite lived up to the hype going into the season. I think perhaps an unfair amount was actually expected of him given the other talent that we have in this field. But yeah, there is pressure on him to perform this weekend. His teammate has been so consistently good. And so unless some sort of misfortune befalls Piastri or Zhou, he needs to be almost flawless this weekend. I think key to his performance will be qualifying. He only qualified 12th last time out in Monza. If he can do better than that, he can set up a really solid weekend. Yeah, and in front of his home fans, it would be great to see him do better. And, a 3-way title fight is always more exciting than a 2-way title fight. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can produce this weekend.
Yeah, a really important weekend for Robert Schwartzman. Obviously, Oscar Piastri extended his advantage last time out. Luke, I suppose he'll be looking for a similar weekend, won't he? More of the same?
Yeah, definitely. Finally getting the feature race win, and it's looking very good for him at the top of the championship, extending his lead over Zhou. And with 3 rounds to go now, it's looking very good for him. And also, he's a rookie this year. He's won Formula Renault F3 last year, and he could make it 3 championships in a row this year. So he's doing very well, and he's also getting the better of Schwartzman, a more experienced teammate. So yeah, he's doing really well.
Yeah, really good job from Oscar Piastri. We have a question from @PowerOfCzech on Twitter, who asks, do you think Piastri will keep his championship lead after this round, or will Zhou and Schwartzman get ahead of him, Luke?
Difficult to say. I think it depends a lot on qualifying. We saw Piastri get pole last time and getting the crucial 4 points. So if Piastri can get pole again this time, it'll help. But with the reverse grid, it makes it so unpredictable. So I think it all depends on qualifying, keeping your nose clean in the first race and also in the third race as well. And just not going over the top, really. If you get 5th, and that's all we can get, don't try and push over the top for 4th and 3rd. Just get the points on offer and see, instead of getting it into the barriers and all that.
Yeah, there's something we've seen Oscar Piastri do so often this season and in Formula 3 last season, is that consistency, isn't it? Which is so important in this championship. And we have a similar question from @Armin Dalmia on Instagram, who asked, how many drivers do you think still have an actual shot at winning the championship, Lawrence?
Probably only 3, I would say, just the top 3 at the moment, realistically. I mean, a perfect weekend is worth 65 points if you factor in qualifying and fastest lap. Only Vips has won 2 races in the same weekend so far, so that ever occurring is unlikely, but it just illustrates how many points are on offer and how quickly things can turn, especially if one of the top 2 leaders has a retirement in the first sprint race and a bad qualifying. You know, you qualify outside of the top 10, you get caught up in incidents at turn 1, perhaps, especially at Sochi when it's such a big pinch point there, then you've got a bad starting position again for the feature race, and you know you're pretty much out of the running for the second sprint race. So I would say mainly the top 3, but the likes of Pourchaire and Tictum behind are still within reach, but they really need to string together a really strong few results in the last few race weekends, because you know after this weekend we'll only have 2 rounds left, so we really are coming up to the pointy end of proceedings here.
Yeah, all very tight at the top, and Teo Pourchaire as well, you know, had a really strong end to the Formula 3 season, so maybe he can do the same in Formula 2 this season. We'll wait and see. So let's talk about Guan Yu Zhou and seemingly Formula 1 bound, Hannah.
He certainly looks to be, if his championship remains on track. Although for how long, I don't exactly know. It's kind of funny, but the second Alfa Romeo seat alongside Valtteri Bottas seems to have suddenly become hot property in recent weeks for the likes of Alex Albon, Nick de Vries and Guan Yu Zhou all being linked to the team. At the moment, he doesn't have the 40 super license points required, but as long as he finishes 5th in the championship, he should make that no problem. And there is the additional clause that the FA brought in because of COVID, although that probably wouldn't apply to him given that he did the Asian F3 Championship earlier this year, where he got 10 of his 29 points. I think probably ironically for him, the 2 biggest stumbling blocks are the 2 rookies of Teo Pourchaire and Oscar Piastri. Piastri, Alpine Academy stablemate, currently outperforming him and leading the championship. And Teo Pourchaire, the 18-year-old Frenchman, has lit up the Formula 2 grid this year in his rookie season, and rightfully so. No wonder Vasseurs have impressed with him and his potential that he could bring. And if reports are to be believed, Zhou's not happy with a 1-year contract on offer. Pourchaire's previously said that his performances in Monza and Sochi will decide his future. If it's true, I understand Zhou's frustration, given that Alpine have once again overlooked their juniors, as they seem to continue to do. But I can't fault Alfa Romeo for wanting to use their academy to properly shape their future in F1. In the end, there's risks either way. Zhou could be beaten by Piastri to the title, and it might hamper his reputation because of that sponsorship as well. Or Alfa risk taking a rookie in the same way AlphaTauri did with Yuki Tsunoda, who's continued to struggle. I can ultimately see Zhou getting the seat, but I can't see him on the grid long term ultimately. I think whether, given the success of Piastri, will he have a long-term future when Alonso retires and swap over to Alpine? I think it's a 1-year contract or bust for him, to be honest.
Yeah, let's wait and see. And obviously, Lawrence, Oscar Piastri, Robert Schwartzman, Are they unlucky to miss out on seats? Bearing in mind Guan Yu Zhou is getting or potentially is getting a seat.
I think especially Oscar Piastri would surely be feeling really hard done by to miss out on a seat, having won Formula Renault, Formula 3, and then if he wins Formula 2 this season, to win those 3 series on the trot. And that's something we see very, very rarely, and the few drivers that achieve those sorts of results usually go on to Formula 1. So I think he could definitely lay a very strong claim to a Formula 1 seat, but there would be nothing wrong with him sticking around for Formula 2 for another season. There are other options such as Formula E, even IndyCar, but that Formula 1 seat is going to be what he really wants. So he'll just have to keep looking for opportunities. What he mustn't avoid, I think, is a sort of Calamai-like situation where you find yourself without a race seat, because you want to put yourself right at the forefront of whatever motorsport you're doing. You want to remind those team bosses exactly how talented you are if you want to continue to progress. So fingers crossed for Piastri that he gets what he deserves for his efforts, and for Schwartzman as well. I think with team bosses have only a few drivers who they can give seats to, and you do need to perform at that top level, and maybe he's slightly underperformed this season and hasn't yet quite done enough to convince the bosses at Ferrari or in the academy or other Formula 1 teams that he's got what it takes at this point. But like we've said, there are still rounds to go. He was brilliant in his rookie season last year, and he has still been performing well, so anything can happen.
Yeah, really interesting. At Ben Tool 18 on Instagram asked, with Alpine keeping Alonso and Ocon, and obviously 2 of their drivers, the top 2 in Formula 2, what's their plan? Will Piastri obviously go and be a development driver for the team in 2022, similar to what Esteban Ocon did at Mercedes in 2019? You just said potentially maybe that's not a good option, because you don't want to put yourself in a similar situation to, as you say, Callum Ilott this year, when he's had a year out and people have not forgotten about him, but they've other drivers come along, don't they? If Victor Martins, for example, or Caio Collet get the jump up to Formula 2 next season and do really well, then who's Oscar Piastri? We've got this guy. What's the best thing for those guys to do?
I think that's a difficult one for Alpine. There has been discussion of the Alpine Academy and what level of opportunity it is giving its drivers, because Zhou got his first test earlier this season at Austria, his first outing on a Formula 1 weekend, and as until now there hasn't been that much opportunity for progression. It's a very new academy, but with Ocon potentially looking elsewhere in the future, who knows? But he probably is tied long term to Alpine. The more likely seat to become vacated is Alonso's, just purely because of his age, the rate at which he's performing. He could be around for many more years with the quality of his driving. So yeah, you could imagine you'd feel a bit disheartened being an Alpine Academy driver, seeing those 2 really quality drivers occupying Formula 1 seats. But as we've seen with Albon to Williams, with Zhou being linked to Alfa Romeo, there are always options elsewhere. Contracts can be signed and ripped up pretty quickly. So fingers crossed for them, and hopefully Alpine do at some point manage to capitalize on that talent that they've been fostering for so long in the junior series.
It's an ironic problem, isn't it? Because it's, they're lucky to have that problem, but at the same time, they don't have any seats to put the drivers in, and the drivers are the ones that miss out, aren't they? So it's a really complicated issue. Obviously, Hannah's already alluded to it, Luke. Théo Pourchaire, obviously the other driver linked to the Alfa Romeo seat, obviously with his Sauber ties, with Zhou potentially signing a 1-year deal as it looks. Is that with a view to Théo Pourchaire potentially being in the car in 2023?
Yeah, I'd say so. Pourchaire's done really well. I mean, Formula 3 last year and winning in Monaco before he left school. And this year, I mean, he's only 18. He won in Monaco in May and left school over the summer. And yeah, he's done really well. So let's see how he gets on in Sochi and the remaining 3 rounds in 2021. And he's with a good team, ART. And next year could be him challenging for the championship, maybe whether he moves teams or sticks with ART. Guess that remains to be seen. And if he keeps delivering, why not? I mean, he's doing really well. And Valtteri Bottas could be the perfect driver for him to learn from in 2023. And especially with the new Formula One rules coming next year, you need a bit of an old head and a bit of a young talent.
Yes, absolutely. With the new Formula One regulations as well, perhaps that strengthens Antonio Giovinazzi's hand a little bit as the team progresses. It would be helpful to have somebody who has that knowledge of the team. And Giovinazzi has been performing so strongly in recent races, albeit with a bit of misfortune on the first lap in Monza. So, potentially Alpha could be looking at retaining him, keeping him for another season, seeing through the transition to the new regulations, and then taking Pourchaire in a year's time after he's matured further and really shown what he's got in Formula 2, perhaps.
I agree with both Lawrence and Luke on that one, but I think Antonio Giovinazzi's position is kind of similar to Callum Ilot's in the sense that they're both probably going to be victims of Ferrari no longer having control of that second seat. Ultimately, Sauber and Alfa Romeo in a position now where they're going to decide their own future. And I think Pourchaire is probably the ideal one to put forward for that. For me, he's shown the talent that he needs to. He's shown that sense that he can grow as a driver. Although I will be finding it slightly ironic if he turns out like Max Verstappen and he drives a Formula One car before he passes his driving license.
Yeah, that would be good. Look, it's a little bit early to say, but would you say he's a title contender next season? Obviously, it's difficult when we don't know who's going to be on the grid, but would you say he almost has to win the title if he wants to be in Formula One in 2023?
Yeah, I'd say Pourchaire will be up there for the title next year in Formula 2. He's done really well this year. Looks like he's got the talent for it. And of course, going into his second season next year, we'll have the extra year of knowledge with the Pirelli rubber, which is notoriously difficult to get a knack of. And he should have a good team, whether it's ART or someone else. He should have a top team. And it's sort of like him delivering, keeping his head down, keeping consistent, and he should be up there.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll see how the rest of this season unfolds before then. Okay, a few other drivers that potentially moving away from Formula 2 next season. Ralph Boschung has tweeted this week saying big decisions to make in the next few weeks. Obviously, his biggest fan and friend of the show, Jim Kimberley, thinks that means he's on his way to Mercedes to replace Lewis Hamilton in 2022. Is it fair to say that we're expecting him to look elsewhere, Hannah, away from Formula 2, potentially driving GT?
It's fair to say it probably is likely move to GT or into the sports car series. I can't really see him going over to IndyCar in the same way it looks like Christian Lundgaard could be, possibly, and obviously Karl Mayer's over there at the moment competing. But I think GT is probably the most likely, considering the financial situation he's in. We've heard all season long the struggles these drivers are having to find funding, and also I don't think a Formula One seat's likely for him as much as Jim would love him to get one. I think ultimately for him, it's got to be a move away, and it's. Thing is, I think a lot of people see it as Formula One or bust, and it was interesting Romain Grosjean speaking about IndyCar, saying that kids dream of Formula One, but drivers shouldn't be ashamed to look elsewhere. There's great opportunities in other grids, whether it's GT, Formula E, IndyCar, or even heading over to World Endurance. We've seen Nick De Vries do it and do well there, so I think probably going to be. But I'm glad we've had another season to get to see him to show his talents, because I think it's only bumped his reputation up more, the things he's been managing to do this season.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where they all end up. I think you're right. I think we could have a few departures. And I saw this question on Instagram and I thought, yeah, wow, this is a really good question. So at smart_Bartwall on Instagram asked, do you think Red Bull will send Jehan Daruvala to DTM next year to replace Alex Albon? That is a really good question. And actually, I think it's a really good idea. So Helmut Marko, if you're listening, I think that's a great idea. Get Jehan in that seat. What do we think, Luke?
Possibly. I mean, there's a lot of traffic in the Red Bull program there in a minute, because you've got the Formula One team, AlphaTauri, the Formula One team, Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda locked in for next year. Got Liam Lawson, Yuri Vips in Formula 2, doing okay, doing a good job, not fighting for the championship this year, but maybe in the next year or the year after, could be up there. So why not? He could do. He'd probably do a good job in DTM Albons. I think he's won a race in DTM, so he'd do a good job. And it's something a bit different for him. Formula One maybe won't happen for him in the next year anyway. There's a lot of traffic in the Red Bull program, so yeah, it could happen.
Yeah, I kind of hope so, because I really like Jehan Daruvala and I think it's a great idea. Lawrence, what do you think? Would you like to see Jehan Daruvala in DTM replacing Alex Albon?
Yeah, why not? I mean, like Luke says, there are of course other people in that Red Bull program. You know, Yuri Vips might fancy that, or whether he'd be able to take being Liam Lawson's teammate everywhere he goes might not be ideal for him. You know. Everybody likes a bit of change. You know, you don't want to get the ick with your teammate, but you know that could be really interesting to see another Formula 2 driver over in DTM. We've spoken a lot about the gaps in this series, and being able to do that racing in between is, you know, Liam Lawson's been doing plenty of it in DTM, so that might be really great for Daruvala to keep that sharpness up in between the gaps, and also to make links with other teams and show his talent in DTM, so that can always be, like Hannah's just spoke about, an option to go to if your aspirations in Formula One or even elsewhere don't quite pay off. DTM is a brilliant series, and if you've got a feel for it and if the teams there have seen your quality, that might be a really good alternative or a really good career path for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really good to see that Formula One teams are creating these other opportunities. They're not just getting rid of their drivers. Obviously, Red Bull in DTM, Ferrari potentially going into GT as well. There's some really good options for their young drivers. So really good to see. And, I think Liam Lawson, who I think we're expecting to see in Formula 2 again next season, but he has done a brilliant job in DTM this season. So good stuff. So moving on then, it's the fourth time Formula 2 has raced at Sochi. Beautiful venue, Lawrence. What are your thoughts on the Sochi circuit?
I think it's a really interesting circuit. I believe it's one of the Tilke circuits as they're known. Formula One has had some issues there in terms of the action, just purely due to the amount of sort of 90-degree, downforce heavy corners right before that main straight, which is the principal overtaking opportunity on the circuit. But Formula 2 just hasn't seemed to struggle quite as much with that. Looking back over last year's racing, we saw Schwartzman overtake into the penultimate bend, I believe it was, which is quite a rare opportunity if you're struggling that much with downforce in the dirty air of the car ahead. And we've seen overtakes around the outside of that long left-hander, turn 3. Of course, in the sprint race, that didn't go to plan and caused quite a nasty accident, which we don't want to see repeated. But in the feature race, I believe it was Yuki Tsunoda going right around the outside of turn 3. So it really has the potential to produce some really spectacular racing. So hopefully that's what we can see again this year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So we've got 3 races to look forward to. So hopefully it can produce some good racing. And obviously looking forward to 2023, Luke, the Russian Grand Prix, moving to St. Petersburg. Formula 2 obviously has been in Sochi for the last few years. Could it potentially go with Russia or with Formula 1 over to St. Petersburg? Would you like to see that? And what are your thoughts of the circuit? Do you think it would suit Formula 2 cars?
Yeah, I think it could happen. I could see Formula 2 racing around Agora Drive. It's a decent circuit. I mean, it's a decent lap length. It reminds me purely from a track map perspective from Alabama's Barber Motorsports Park, which is in IndyCar. That was earlier this year. That was a pretty cool track. It's kind of like a mini Algarve. But Agora Drive, it might be a bit difficult to overtake. The straights aren't that long. And there are a few high-speed corners. And they're going to add a little new section around the end of the lap, which looks a bit slow, a bit technical. But Formula 2 always creates good racing everywhere it goes. So I think it will be a good track. I mean, the track itself is a bit longer than Imola, a bit shorter than Miami. So it's not exactly a short lap, but it's not the Nordschleife either. So it should be a good track.
Hannah, Lawrence, Luke, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. And thank you to you guys at home for watching as well. If you've enjoyed the show, please make sure you give it a like, hit the subscribe button for more track guides and, of course, content from the F2 show. We'll be back next week to dissect all of the action from Sochi, so please keep an eye out for that. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.